Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, obviously enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everyone. Tonight is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. This is live stream 1345. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out it's super casual around here. We're just talking about the latest in tabletop role-playing game news, and then I will usually tackle a topic related to our hobby. And tonight it's going to be another edition of our forgotten RPG favorites, and I will discuss Bushido from Fantasy Games Unlimited. Of course, that's after we tackle the tabletop role-playing game news. Now, of course, when you're out watching videos here on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to see here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Also, because this is a live show, there is chat available. Now, you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least an hour before you can take part in chat. But if you check off that box and you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my absolute best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Danny Gable. Semper Buffos with us, as is Flint Fireforge Cthulhu, and our good friend of the show and chat moderator, the Madman. Agile Monk is also chiming on in. So welcome, everybody. We might even have the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D lurking in the shadows as one of our chat moderators. That is a pretty good possibility. So we shall see. So did you miss me? You know, it's funny. Last week I wrap up the Thursday stream, and I know my dad's birthday is on the 21st of July. I don't forget that. I used to. I always mixed it up if it was the 21st or 22nd. But over the past, 10 years, I always remember it's the 21st. But for whatever reason, it didn't connect with me that it was Tuesday. It was yesterday, right? And it was my dad's 90th birthday. So there was no stream last night. And of course, if you follow me on social media, I had pointed that out, that dummy me didn't realize the 21st was Tuesday, so there wouldn't be a show. So if anybody tuned in yesterday and they were wondering, geez, what's going on? There's no show today. What's going on? What's happening? Now you know. Now you know what was going on. Let's see. Harvey Chuckles is joining us in chat. So let's jump on into the news, because we got a fairly big show tonight. Landing in stores today from my friends over at Chaosium Inc. is Call of Cthulhu Innsmouth. And here's the straight dope. Innsmouth is the definitive guide to the rotting seaport town, one of the most iconic settings for Call of Cthulhu. Once a thriving seaport on the Massachusetts coast during the 19th century, a dark shadow has fallen over Innsmouth. Some say old Captain Obed Marsh made a pact with the devil, while others tell stranger and more wicked tales. In the early 1920s, the town's former glories are long forgotten, and wise folk keep away. Secrets have a currency in Innsmouth, and the unwary pay a high price for asking the wrong questions. An essential resource for Innsmouth-based scenarios as well as campaigns within the wider Arkham and Miskatonic Valley region. You'll find descriptions, insights, and plot seeds from over 100 Innsmouth locations in and around the town. Call of Cthulhu Innsmouth includes street maps in player and keeper versions, as well as floor plans for key locations, gossip and rumors that spark further mysteries and adventure. The book also covers the secrets, intrigues, and profiles for more than 80 characters and encounters. The book details the full secret history of Innsmouth, its unseen masters, and the specifics about the mysterious esoteric Order of Dagon. You'll also find extensive information about the Dagon cult and the horrid Deep Ones, with entirely new and horrifying aspects. This supplement is part of the Arkham Unveiled line and is designed for use with both the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game and, optionally, the Pulp Cthulhu supplements, which are both, of course, available separately. The 270-page hardcover with PDF came out today. It is carrying an MSRP of $59.99. If you want to grab the PDF, it is available over at DriveThruRPG for $29.99. And if you were paying attention, I shared my review of Call of Cthulhu Innsmouth this past weekend. Yes. I liked it. I liked it a lot. You'll have to check it out if you are curious. I should mention, someone has pointed out that the PDF right now is not including the poster map. It does include the keeper and player maps, but there's also I'm sorry, it's not a poster map. It's a facsimile much about the time period in Japanese history or how to design a proper adventure. Well, I think having a hard time designing a proper adventure is going to be an issue with any role-playing game. But yeah, I would think to effectively really run a memorable Bushido campaign, probably have to have at least kind of a feel for that era. We're going to get into Bushido in far more detail in just a bit. Kevin King has joined us. Welcome. Good to see you once again. And I do see that Miss Sarah D is with us. Said they went to click the chat box and hit the back button on their mouse. So I guess they left the show or left chat. Anyway, so check out Call of Cthulhu Innsmouth. I will point out, it is not one of the items that is on sale in the Christmas and July sale over at DriveThruRPG. That's usually the case with brand new releases. Anyway, moving right along, there's a new backer kit which launched for Pelgrane Press. Here's what I know about Maryshire Detective Club. Solve charming village mysteries. Build a living community together and uncover secrets in a countryside full of gossip, tea, and entirely too many cousins. Pelgrane Press has announced Maryshire Detective Club, a cozy fantasy investigative tabletop role-playing game, say that 5 times fast, powered by the award-winning Gumshoe system. In fact, the crowdfunding campaign launched on Backer Kit yesterday. Designed by Gareth Ryder Hanrahan, Maryshire Detective Club invites players into the peaceful villages of Maryshire, where amateur detectives solve mysteries involving suspicious neighbors, awkward family feuds, questionable inheritances, eccentric local traditions, and the occasional murder. Set in the idyllic countryside of the Riding, the game blends cozy fantasy, classic detective fiction, folkloric weirdness, and collaborative storytelling into a long-form mystery campaign experience centered on community and recurring characters. In a hole in the ground, They found a body. Begins the game's campaign copy, setting the tone for a world where tea, gossip, nosiness, and clever deduction matter far more than combat. Players create halflings, dwarves, puka. Puka, eh? Nice. Or boggarts, each bringing their own distinctive abilities and perspectives to investigations. During character creation, the group collaboratively builds a shared village map filled with homes, landmarks, neighbors, rivalries, and local scandals. Over the course of a campaign, the village evolves into a living record of the group's adventures. Powered by the Gumshoe Investigative RPG system, Maryshire Detective Club focuses on uncovering clues, interpreting evidence, and piecing together mysteries through role-playing and deduction rather than failed dice rolls or combat encounters. The core book will include the complete Gumshoe Investigative system, collaborative village creation tools, richly illustrated setting material, mystery design guidance, ready-to-play mysteries, campaign resources, and player aids. And, of course, Maryshire Detective Club continues Pelgrane Press's tradition of investigative role-playing games, including acclaimed titles such as Trail of Cthulhu, Night's Black Agents, The Yellow King role-playing game, Time Watch, and Swords of the Serpentine. Now, there are a variety of pledge levels, but you can reserve a copy of the core rulebook with PDF for a pledge of approximately $47.09. If you want to just score the PDF alone, you can do so for a pledge of approximately $26.91. And the backer kit project runs through August 22nd. The expected fulfillment is May of 2027. Few things to mention here. I took a peek earlier today. This is about a couple of $1,000s away from its goal. So it may have already reached its funding goal. I will also point out there is it's about a 2-minute video, which explains this with a lot more humor. Sadly, it's got background music, which would flag me for a copyright violation. So I did not share it. But if you want to check it out, if you have any interest in this backer kit project, do me a favor, visit thegaminggang.com. It's one of our most recent news pieces. Click on that, follow the link that's in that news piece, because Pelgrane Press gave me a specific link with almost like an affiliate code, but it's not an affiliate code. It is just tracking who came from the gaming gang to check it out. So, like I said, if you are interested in this, do me a favor, take that little extra step and show that, people do pay attention to our news. Which they do. Tessie Trekkies with us asking, is this the Shire murders? Sort of. Yeah, sort of. Like I said, the video has a bit of a sense of humor to it. So I will be very honest, though. I find the art style to be kind of ho-hum. That's just me. What can I tell you? What can I tell you? Although, gotta also point out, this is designed by Gareth Ryder Hanrahan. So that's saying so. That's usually quality, folks. So that's why I saw this. I was like, really? Because he's usually doing he did the Fall of Cthulhu. What was the adventure? I can't remember. It was a campaign. I reviewed it. I think I reviewed it. Is it last year's Gen Con it came out or year before that? So he's kind of a Lovecraft designer, creator. So I was kind of like, oh, wow. Okay. All right. And did I say hello to Walona's Cave? She just popped in. Or he popped in. I always forget if it's male or female. Anyway, welcome. A new bundle of holding features the Hackmaster role-playing game from Kenzer and Company. And here's the deets on the deal. Adventure! The March 2016 Hackmaster bundle featuring, well, you guessed it, Hackmaster, tabletop fantasy role-playing game from Kenzer and Company, has been resurrected. Originally a parody introduced in Jolly Blackburn's long-running gaming comic Knights of the Dinner Table, Hackmaster has evolved into a full-fledged, serious, well, semi-serious, fantasy role-playing game. Once again, this Hackmaster offer gives you everything you need for your own campaign, including all the core rulebooks for an unbeatable bargain price. This revival also promotes Kenzer's new Kickstarter campaign for the Hackmaster 25th Anniversary Edition, which is not launched yet. I will share news of that when it does launch. For just $12.95, you get all 5 titles in the revived offers player collection. There's a retail value of $57 as DRM-free PDFs, including the complete 405-page Hackmaster Player's Handbook, 2 volumes of Priest Spells, Zealot's Guide Book 1 and Book 2, and the adventures in the realm of the Elm King and its sequel, Legacy of the Elm King. As a convenience, you'll also get many free Hackmaster downloads from the Kenzer and Company website. And if you pay more than the current threshold price of $28.03, I think, guess it's probably changed by a few cents here or there since I wrote this up, you'll level up and also get this revival's entire Game Master collection with 3 more supplements worth an additional $95, including the 370-page Hackmaster Game Master's Guide, the 387-page Hacklopedia of Beasts Monster Manual, and the campaign setting Frandor's Keep. These savings will run through July 30th. I almost had an opportunity years ago to check out Hackmaster. We were at Origins. Ellie and I, we were covering Origins and started chatting with somebody from Kenzer and Company. It was not Jolly Blackburn. It may have just been somebody who was helping out. And we're kind of talking to him, you know, at this point in time, I think we had been around a couple of years. And they didn't really know who we were. And they were actually kind of rude. So I was like, okay, we're leaving. See ya, thanks. Like I said, I kind of got the impression that it was like a volunteer that, you know, because we were trying to find somebody to maybe interview to talk about it, because I think they were probably on, I don't know, 2nd edition at that point in time, maybe 3rd edition. So anyway, I wouldn't mind checking this out. And Wallona's Cave is a man named Moses. Well, thank you very much. I guarantee I will forget that within the next month or so. I'll be like, yeah, okay. A man or a woman? Doesn't matter. It's just, you know, well, of course it matters to Wallona's Cave, but everyone's welcome here. Shazama85 is with us. They'd love to give more Hackmaster adventures from the first one since it works well with 2nd edition. Nice. I would guess that it's like an open game license role-playing game. Wallona's Cave says they keep getting Hackmaster confused with Harnmaster. Oh, there's a big difference. I can guarantee that. Captain Infinity Time Travel Police is with us. Bushido. I never played it, but after a positive review in White Dwarf, I did buy the box set. actually still have it. Oh, you lucky bastard. I had the box set. It's long gone. I mentioned this to Elliot. I've mentioned on the show too from time to time. Man, I really wish I had all the role-playing game stuff. Not even just role-playing game stuff. All the board games that I had throughout the years. Yeah, I would have a pretty damn interesting collection. I got an interesting collection now, but I have a lot of vintage stuff. All right, moving right along. The latest supplement for Traveler has arrived from Mongoose Publishing. I've got the lowdown on the Aslan Harriet. The Aslan Harriet is the youngest and second largest interstellar community in charted space, yet resembles no other empire in structure or government. There's no central government, no regional districts, no common laws, and no standing military. Instead, the Harriet is an amorphous, decentralized collection of clans, each with its own leader, organized around vaguely familiar lines and locked in competition with all of the others. Deep within the interior of the Harriet is a fierce society, both hauntingly familiar and persistently alien, filled with rich tradition, profound culture, and Byzantine politics. A merely incautious traveler might inadvertently insult or offend an Aslan, but the truly reckless can easily find themselves in a duel to the death. In the Lakoi sector, the Aslan tamed a wilderness, battled human colonists, and explored mysterious ruins. There they fought some of the most bloodiest battles in the history of the Harriet. For travelers, the Aslan Harriet provides new equipment, robots, vehicles, and starships. For the referee, new clans, aliens, patrons, and worlds await. The 272-page hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $59.99. If you want to grab just the PDF, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG for $39.99. I will mention I don't think the hardcover is out just yet. I think it might be an August release. Not positive, but I mean, this isn't being presented as a pre-order, which usually when Mongoose does a pre-order, it's 2 to 3 months out. That's usually when they do their pre-orders for stuff. Now, there is a release schedule over at Mongoose Publishing's website. I have not taken a peek. So, I mean, this could be in stores right now. I just don't think it is. I think it's coming out next month. Pretty cool. Sadly, I don't think Mongoose is at Gen Con. If they are, they're probably going through like Studio 2 or something. Possible. Because I don't recall Mongoose being, well, I don't think they've been at Gen Con in years. I think the last time I saw Mongoose at a convention was at Origins, amazingly enough. Keithulu asked, do Aslan houses have cat flaps instead of doors? Oh, right there. Keithulu's now going to get into a duel to the death for that insult. Dun, dun, dun. Age of Adventure pops on in and says, they're here for Bushido. Stephen from Roll for Combat, who I will probably run into at Gen Con, is with us. Oh my God, Bushido. They advertise in like every Dragon magazine. Now, should mention we're going to finish up our last news piece in just a second. And then, yeah, we'll do our usual nonsense and then get into the discussion. Keep in mind, this is not like a review of Bushido coming up or anything like that. I personally don't own it anymore, but this is Forgotten RPG favorites that we tackle from time to time. So I'm going to share my memories of the game, how I was introduced to it, and we will kind of talk a little bit about the game itself, mechanically and things like that, from what I remember. So just keep that in mind. Strike Kismet says the males of that culture get a kid's toy to pretend to guide the shit. The women do all the work. Well, what do I know? They're Viger. I think that's how it's pronounced. Viger. Let's see. J-Man has popped on in. Welcome. Hey, I guess some folks are interested in Bushido. So let's finish up our last news piece because the English language edition of the Ekrim Player's Guide, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure if I am or not, is now available in PDF from Open Sesame Games. I got the scoop. Ekrim is the English adaptation of the celebrated French role-playing game of the same name. It introduces the players to a steampunk post-apocalyptic world where political and social struggles mix with supernatural intrigues. The game runs on a lightweight 2d6 system that favors skill investment over luck and focuses on roleplay. The French version of the game, adapted from writer Matteo Gabory? Taking a wild guess. Hey, come on, I butcher English. Other languages? Yeah, okay. Other people's names, from foreign countries? I'm real good at that. Anyway, this was produced after a successful crowdfunding campaign in 2016, gathered almost 100,000 euros, and has been highly praised by the backers, critics, and general audience. The Player's Guide is the first and primary book for anyone who wants to know about Ekrim. It explains the world as it is perceived by the majority of the inhabitants of the city-states and the traverses. Here, both the conductor, I guess that's our GM, and the players will find their main source of knowledge about the history of the world of Ekrim, its geography, its ideologies, its economy, and its cultures. The point here is to give you an extensive database about this universe so you can easily create one of its characters. Players can read it quite safely as it will not spoil any secrets or hidden truths about the world. The Pilot's Handbook chapter actually contains precise descriptions of the main nations from the lens of in-universe explorers. The book also describes the entire rule system and covers different methods for creating characters. The 272-page PDF is available right now over at DriveThruRPG for $25. This looks kind of cool. Kind of post-apocalyptic steampunk. Sounds interesting. Tessie Trekkie says it's amazing. The Player's Guide is great. And like I said, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be pronounced Ekrim or Ikrim. Ikrim probably sounds closer to what it probably is, but it just sounds a little, silly. I guess silly. Ikrim. Would you like an eclair with Ikrim in it? No. Could be. I don't know. Watch, that's probably the actual pronunciation. And the people from Open Sesame Games are going to see this thing and be like, that son of a bitch. Actually, more like, oh, that son of a bitch. All righty. So that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I mentioned DriveThruRPG. Don't forget the Gaming Gang. Thus, the Dispatch is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. There are many of them. And if you want to help support the outlet, by all means, swing on over to thegaminggang.com whenever you're going to hang out at one of the One Bookshelf sites. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a 5% commission on most sales. Not every sale, but most. And, of course, all those commissions really do add up to help keep thegaminggang.com around. Should also mention through the end of the month, it is Xmas in July over at Drive Through RPG. It is also at like Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild. It's not at every One Bookshelf site. It's at quite a few of them, though. And it is one of the two big sales that you will find over at, say, Drive Through RPG. So in the best deals, best bundles, there are like certain games or core books that are like 75% off, or starter sets at 75% off. Tens of thousands of PDFs are 30% off or more. So it is a fantastic time to stock up. So I just wanted to mention that in case you were not aware that it is Xmas in July. Also, we'll mention, since we've got Stephen from Roll for Combat hanging out with us, the Deathbringer crowdfunding project has passed $1 million. So congrats on that. Congrats to Stephen and Professor GM. I'm sorry, Professor DM. Sorry about that. And the rest of the folks who worked very, very hard to bring that to life. So yeah, not too shabby, not too shabby. Hey, maybe in the future we'll get a chance to take a close peek at it. Sim says maybe they'll even get me a Deathbringer statue to keep the Mimic company. Yes. One thing I will point out. Well, actually, you know what? I got a quick question for Stephen. It can't wait till Gen Con. Was there any pushback from people with the amount of kind of old school 70s sexualization of the female characters in some of the artwork that has been shared? I'm kind of curious. So, I mean, I'm sure people aren't like, oh my God, but I would take a guess. Probably a few commenters or emails. Shazama said, and congrats to all of us Deathbringer backers too. For what? You're doing what you're supposed to do. You're consuming product. So Steven says, yes, tons. I figured there'd be some. I wasn't sure how much. But, you know, funny enough, I would think, now I have not had an opportunity to see really anything from Deathbringer except what's been shared. I would think that it's probably not a game that would be jumping out to appeal to them anyway. To the people who are like really offended by, you know, naked navels and bosoms and stuff like that. Although I have not seen any nudity. I've just seen, yeah, like Red Sonja kind of artwork. So, anyway, Strike Kismet said they'd be more worried about the skull dice than the chain bikini. Nice. All right. Anyway, back to our scheduled nonsense. Should also mention, if you enjoy the gaming gang, if you find this to be a valuable source of information, yeah, hell, if you just like what we do, there are a couple of other ways that you can help support the outlet. First, by making a one-time donation by way of PayPal, and you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Oh, magnifique! Yum! I don't know why people do that when they're trying to do like an impersonation of someone who's French. What is it? What's the cartoon? Klondike. Isn't it Klondike Cat? What is? Oh, damn it! I'm trying to remember. Isn't it a rat he's trying to catch? And he's got like a little mustache and that. And he's like, Oh, that's it. Savoir-faire is everywhere. No. Yeah, I'm a weirdo. I am a goofball. Yeah, I think people realize that. Anyway, so you can make that one-time donation over at PayPal. You can also become a monthly member of our Patreon. Yeah, that's right. We've got a Patreon as well. And of course, on every live show, I enjoy giving a shout out to all our Patreon members: Ben Oathwaite, Cabal, Kevin R. Smith, Talzak, Peaceful Porcupine, William King, the Tabletop Scholar, Sean O'Donnell, Herman Lutman, Gustavo Cavalho, Kevin King, Game Cat, RPG Munch, Tier 2 DM, Far Adrift, Peace Dracolich, Dan Webb, Tessie Trekkie, Agile Monk, The Madman, and Flint Fireforge. Big tip of the cap to all of you. And I will mention, we are going to be rolling out a free PDF of the month, which will be available to our members at the $10 tier or higher. It's going to start in August. I think we're going to provide the PDFs between the 10th and the 15th every month. Got a few publishers and creators who are willing to contribute. In fact, Agile Monk here in chat had pointed out that maybe they'll float some stuff out for our Patreon members. So very nice. Very cool. Much appreciated. All right, so tonight we're going to have another Forgotten RPG Favorites episode. I'm going to discuss Bushido from Fantasy Games Unlimited. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
We are about to witness the takeoff of the first manned rocket to outer space. We pick up the count. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0!
We're off to visit the planets. There are treats galore in the stars. Venus is loaded with candy, and ice cream is found upon Mars. The soda pop's fizzing on Saturn. When you're thirsty, it sure hits the spot. And Jupiter's really jumping with popcorn that's buttered and hot. But the best of them all is the planet where all of these treats are at hand. And that is the spot we now head for, our theater refreshment stand.
But done! It's refreshment time!
I'm Chili Dilly, the personality pickle. Packed in a jar for the freshest flavor. Served cold in a sack for you to savor. So dainty to eat, no muss, no fuss. An ideal snack for all of us. Crisp, tender, and tasty with a bit of spice. Buy one now. Taste how nice. Snack bar clerks will knock themselves silly, speeding your order for a real Chili Dilly.
A secret cave! Yipes! 40 thieves! With 40 knives! Time for your Cheerios, kid!
Right, Suit?
Get yourself go, get Cheerios, Energy-O's that help you grow. Get yourself go, power with Power-O's. Come on strong with Cheerios. Start feeling your Cheerios.
Go with Cheerios!
Got your parachute?
I forgot it.
How about the Wilkins coffee?
I forgot that too.
You'll never forget this.
The sword, chosen weapon of the samurai.
I won't fight you.
Two brothers. One lives by the samurai code.
I am Yakuza now.
The other lives for revenge. drawn into a bizarre murder.
Do you know who the killer is?
I have a damn good idea.
Your life is in danger if you do not fight.
Let the combat begin!
Where the world's most brutal weapons masters meet for money and fame. He must face them all.
It's your destiny.
And his own brother.
We have to get out of here.
To take back his family's honor. But in the blood sport known as Live Blade, there are no rules.
I have to do this.
And only one can survive. Martial arts master David Bradley of American Ninja. And karate and weapons champion Mark Dacascos. American Samurai.
You know, I have to throw some movie that's somehow conceivably related to our topic of the night. And it's usually some crap. Some discussion of, you know what? I think it was the Asian actor was in Brotherhood of the Wolf. That's an awesome movie. This is an excellent movie. And then there's another movie that a lot of people mix up with that, In the Company of Wolves. And hey, Brotherhood of the Wolf is a French movie. Seems to be a theme here tonight. Quite a bit of nudity in it, too, if I recall. Yeah. Oh, Straight Kismet asks, what happened to Tom Cruise? Cruse. Peaceful Porcupine is with us. I also saw that J.D. Sewell and Michael Hislop are with us tonight in chat. So welcome. All right, so tonight it's another Forgotten RPG Favorites episode, and we're going to be talking about Bushido from Fantasy Games Unlimited. Came out in 1981. The original box set contained 2 rule books, a multi-panel map of feudal Japan, it's actually Nippon, a Game Master screen, if I remember correctly, I think it was cardstock, and reference and character sheets. Now, this is available still. I believe it was out of print for a while. And a few years ago, FGU reappeared because I think one of the original founders restarted it. And in fact, I think they release like new adventures for stuff like Aftermath and Bushido, Villains and Vigilantes. Wasn't Villains and Vigilantes also FGU? I'm pretty positive it was. I had that. In fact, I had all of those. But I think the first RPG that FGU released was actually Chivalry and Sorcery, which they no longer have the rights to. So there's that. J.D. Sewell says, don't listen to the dub on Brotherhood of the Wolf. It's terrible. I always watch movies with subtitles. I don't. Only time I'll watch a dub is I might do that with animation. If I don't want to have to like necessarily pay strict attention to what's going on, if I want to work on other things at the same time. Histio is with us again, also pointing out they released a new Star Sector Atlas for Space Opera, another game I had from them. So, like I said, I think Chivalry and Sorcery was the first RPG FGU released. And I think after that was Bushido. I think it was the second one because almost positive that Daredevils and Aftermath are built off of the Bushido system. So Yes. So Hisio points out the soft cover book is $20, so it's no longer a box set. It is a soft cover book. Weirdly enough, over on the FGU website, it says it includes the 3 books that were included in the box set, but there weren't 3 books, there were 2. I don't know. I don't know if that was just a mistake there. So also should point out, you can get the PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG normally for $10. Right now, it is part of that Xmas in July sale, so you can snag it for $7. How about that? Pretty sweet. So let's talk a little bit about Bushido. Let's talk about the game itself, and I'll tell you the little story. You know, I like to share stories about how I got involved with a game or how I was introduced to a game, things like that. So weirdly enough, and those of you out there who do have Bushido and might remember, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, because a lot of this I'm just kind of going off of the old memory banks. So there were 2 books. One was the Heroes, I think it was titled The Heroes of Nippon. And then the second book was, I want to say it was The Lands of Nippon or the Lands of Nippon. Oh, there we go. Right there. Captain Infinity, Time Travel Police. The Heroes of Nippon and Land of Nippon. So Japan is not really referenced all that much in the books, if I remember correctly. It's referred to as Nippon because it's a fantasy world. So it's a fantastical world. It's not, okay, well, you know, you want to role play Shogun, you know, James Clavell's Shogun. Well, yeah, I mean, you could, honestly, using Bushido, but it was a fantasy game and it was pretty damn crunchy. Rules wise, pretty complex. In fact, I think they streamlined the mechanics for Daredevils. Then I think they actually added more into Aftermath because it's essentially, you know, you've got like laser weapons and, you know, slug throwers and stuff like that. Gold Monkeys with us says, if it helps, Nippon just means Japan in Japanese. Yes, I'm sure most people know that. But it is referred to as Nippon, I believe, by the authors to kind of give it more of a, well, how would I phrase it? I don't want to say unusual, but rather than just referring to it as, oh, it's Japan, they refer to it as Nippon because probably most people at that point in time wouldn't have had a clue that it's actually Japan. Anyway, so you start off, we got our attributes. It is strength, deftness, I want to say speed. So unlike, say, Dungeons and Dragons, we do have a separation of like agility and quickness. Then we've got health and wit and will. So those are our 6 attributes. And then there are some other characteristics which are achieved by combinations and then divided by and so forth, right? So the average human, their attribute scores are 10. So they have strength 10, speed 10, so on and so forth. Now, the player characters are supposed to be classical heroes. So, of course, they will have higher attributes. They will have higher skill scores and things like that. They will have, I think it was ki, which is sort of like some games will refer to it as chi, and like your eternal essence, you know, your eternal power that you could spend to do different things. Michael Islam says, not as crunchy as Rollmaster. Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. Yeah, oh yeah. So the scale for your attributes actually went from 1 to 40. And I think the thing that was kind of tricky, for one, Fantasy Games Unlimited was never great at laying out the rules of their various different games. Their games tended to be kind of all over the place. So I just remember that, and it's not, we're not just talking about Bushido, we're, Aftermath, Space Opera. They had a habit of like introducing concepts before actually explaining what that thing was. So early on in the rules, there was the BCS, which was like your basic number that you needed to roll equal to or less in order to succeed. And everything gets broken down into a BCS. And then we've got raw. And then we have adjusted. So what you would do is you would take your attributes. I think you did the same with your skill numbers, because there were all these different skills. This is one of the things I thought was pretty cool about Bushido, was that, in my opinion, not really knowing much Japanese mythology and legend, and at that point, not much history outside of like the Second World War, it felt like it really captured kind of that era that they were aiming for, and like the mysticism, as well as the fact that honor played such a huge role in everyday life, and the caste system was huge in everyday life. Like I said, I thought it did pretty well. It really felt like it, I guess I would say it felt right to someone who probably wouldn't know any better, which would have been me when I was 15 years old. But if I remember correctly, you used to take your attribute or your skill and you divided by 5, rounded down, and then that was the number you needed to roll under 20. I mean, under on a 20-sided die. I know what a role-playing game is. I know what dice do. But the thing was, you had all these other modifiers that you would add or subtract to that BCS to give you the number you needed to roll equal to or less than. And I think like on a 1 was an automatic success, not necessarily a critical success, but an automatic success. And then on a 20, it was an automatic failure. Now, one of the other cool things about Bushido were the skills. And it was like, okay, so you had like your combat skills for the Bushi. And then you also had magic skills for your magic users, because there were a couple of classes that utilized magic, like mages and priests. But you had things like calligraphy, massage, tea ceremony, I mean, poetry, painting, things that were actually important to like a cultured individual. Because remember, you're not, well, for the most part, I wouldn't expect you to be playing a bunch of villagers who are trying to fight off a group of bandits or anything like that. Now, in Bushido, you were playing kind of, classical heroes, kind of folks that legends are made from, right? So I thought that was very, very cool. So we also had our character classes, and there were quite a few of them. I think there were 6, if I remember right. So you had the Bushi, who were your classic warrior, right? So they, willing to fight to the death, never surrender, courageous, your classic kind of fighter sort of character. We also had the Doka, I want to say, and they were your like unarmed combat specialist, right? So more of a modern, watching karate movies or kung fu movies, stuff like that. That sort of, your Bruce Lee sort of character. And maybe they use, nunchucks, but they specialize in unarmed combat. We also had the Shugenja, which was our magician. And I remember in the book, we didn't have like a separate section that talked about magic. It was right there in the class. So you went through all the information. So the actual character classes came a little bit later in the first book. In fact, one of the last things, well, I guess maybe not one of the last things, but character creation was like further back in book 1. It wasn't like the first thing that you got into. All of the different classes and skills and attributes and how do you create the BCS and stuff like that all came before that. And then the magic was actually in the class information. So when we had like the mages, then because there were like schools of magic, like fire, air, wood, all those spells were in that section of the character class information. And the same was about the priest sort of characters, the Gakusho, I want to say. You had 2 kinds because you had 2 major religions in Nippon. You had Buddhists and is it Shintoist? Maybe it's Shintoist. And they were clergy, but they had access to magic as well, but their magic came from the gods. And there were all different spells there too, but they also had specific things that if you were one of these priests that you had access to, like to give a blessing or to heal. So they were kind of your cleric sort of character as far as that went. We also had the Yakuza. So your professional criminal, not ninja, but your professional criminal sort. And they didn't necessarily have to be villainous. They could be like a Robin Hood kind of character. So you had the Yakuza, and then you also had the ninja, which is, your traditional ninja class, assassin. Once again, did not necessarily have to be like an evil character. But I also thought it was kind of funny because to become a ninja, you had to be born into a ninja family. Or adopted, I guess. I guess you could be adopted into the family. But you couldn't become a ninja if you had like no affiliation whatsoever. All right, so let's take a minute. Let's pop on into chat because I know people are going back and forth a little bit in chat. So Agile Monk said, as you know, Jeff, from our chats, I was and have always been a big fan of FGU. Have owned almost all of their games. Bushido was a favorite. My third favorite from FGU is Daredevils. Agile Monk said, hey, lay off Rollmaster. My son and I still love it. But yes, Chartmaster takes some work and effort. It's kind of funny because when like Arms Law came out, Claw Law, Spell Law, they were supposed supposed to be essentially supplemental to your D&D games, right? And I mean, there was complexity there too. There were a lot of tables you were rolling, a lot of charts, as Agile Monk points out. But it didn't create like a huge amount of complexity. When ICE decided that they were going to create their own role-playing game built off of Arms Law, Claw Law, Spell Law, that's when it was like, yikes, here comes all the complexities. And then, weirdly enough, Middle-earth role-playing was kind of streamlined. It was like, all right. Agile Monk says Space Opera was their other big favorite from FGU. So I had Villains and Vigilantes, Bushido, Space Opera. I may have had Chivalry and Sorcery. And I may have sold it to like a friend because of its complexity. I seem to recall a fantasy role-playing game from FGU that I owned. And to my knowledge, I think that was kind of it, wasn't it? I don't think there was another fantasy game that FGU had back in late 80s. I don't think. All right. So let's see. Harvey Chuckle says Space Opera is great. Yeah, I like. Well, we'll talk a little bit once I kind of get into my memories of Bushido and that. But yes, I will refer to Space Opera as well. Michael Hislop says they love Roll Master and Space Master. I remember that. Roll a 66 on the E-Crit chart. Hissia says, very crunchy. All the FGU games were more complicated than they needed to be, and they were not as intuitively presented as they could have been. Although I think, and I'm sure Agile Monk can either confirm or deny, I thought Daredevils, because that I don't remember owning. I thought that was kind of a streamlined, kind of a lighter weight FGU. JD Sewell asks, so is Bushido the fire under TSR to publish Oriental Adventures? I would doubt it. Because I don't think FGU role-playing games ever sold really well. I think they were an acquired taste. And I think they still are. I still think they're an acquired taste. Agile Monk says, Paul Hume wrote the majority of Bushido. He was a Japanese miniature wargamer. Yes, and that's why combat kind of feels similar to miniature war games at that time. So Agile Monk says, yeah, Bushido did help push Oriental Adventures. I did not know that. Let's see. Michael Hislop says the culture skills were big for samurai. Agile Monk's also pointing out, I had mentioned this earlier, it came out in 1981. So yes, it came out at the time early on in the role-playing hobby. Max Apocalypse is with us in chat. Welcome. Max Apocalypse says they never played Bushido. The only FGU game they ever played is Villains and Vigilantes. All right. So, yeah, Villains and Vigilantes got the most recognition, is what Agile Monk's pointing out. I believe that was, I think that may have been the first FGU game I ever picked up. Max Apocalypse says, yeah, I forgot. Chivalry and Sorcery was with FGU first. Agile Monk says they prefer Champions over V&V. And of course, Daredevils was, pulp action. It was kind of like two-fisted action sort of, but it was also kind of like weird science too, right? I don't think it was just because what was it? Something Spies and Private Eyes from another company. I don't I don't remember there being a whole lot of like supernatural aspect to that because I had that. So, isn't it Mercenary Spies and Private Eyes? Something that kind of rings a bell. All right, so let's go back, talk a little more about Bushido. So combat was very crunchy. As I just mentioned, it kind of had a feel like a miniatures game from that period, from that time, where you had a lot of different modifiers you had to take into account. So remember, you were looking at that BCS. So you would calculate the BCS. And the funny thing is, if you calculate the BCS, just the raw score, a lot of times it was really low. It was super low. And you're like, okay. So it's like, oh, it's a 3. So it's like, oh, so you're saying I got to roll a 3 or less on a 20-sided die? Okay. Something else I just remembered. If I remember right, because there were percentile dice and there was also 1,000-sided die in Bushido. And to get percentile dice and 1,000-sided dice, they told you to roll D20s, not D10s. So a 10-sided die was not one of the dice that was required for the game. Is it possible that 10-sided dice weren't very common at that point in time? Because I seem to recall percentile dice in the Call of Cthulhu box set. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I remember that. You know, I thought that was kind of weird. Like, oh, roll 2 20-sided dice and take the single or second digit, and there you go. It's like, oh, okay. So anyway, so you could have a really low basic chance, or BCS. But then all the different modifications could come into play. So if you were like flanking your target, you might get a +5. I think you always added your level to it too. Now there are only 6 levels. So you had actually 0, 7 really. So you had 0 level through 6th. But if I remember correctly, I think characters always started off at 1st level. So remember, they're supposed to be classic heroes, not just normal everyday people. So there were critical hits, there were critical fumbles. I remember armor class went from 0 to 10, and I think it was even called armor class. And armor did not absorb damage. Armor was a modifier to the adjusted BCS. So like I think a 10 armor class would have been like a samurai warlord, you know, all just armored up to the hilt. Whereas someone who wasn't wearing any sort of armor, was just wearing clothing, would have been a 0. So I remember that was a big thing, was armor class was deducted from your adjusted BCS. And then I think if you rolled like 10% or less of your BCS, that was a critical hit. And I think if you rolled a 20, that was a critical fumble. But like hit points and things like that, your hit points were your health score. So, you know, you might, an average human would have 10. So characters might have, 15, maybe 20 if they were, like, a fighter, a bushi, So Michael Hislop says the level limit always bothered them. Yeah, weirdly enough, there were like three, there were like, well, four, really, four like advancement avenues for the characters. One was level. So you would earn experience points. That's how you would go up in level. And I believe that gave you an increase in your hit points. And it may have given you an increase if you were a magic user, like it opened more spells up for you. Then you also had the ability to train to increase your attributes. It was like for every month you trained, you could raise an attribute 1 point. Now remember, this was from like 1 to 40, not 3 to 18. But still, yeah, I spent 6 months, building up my health. Okay, well, now you got 6 more points. 6 more hit points. I mean, so some of that was pretty big deal. You also had skill. So you could increase your skills. And then there's also like your honor. So that would increase your status as you earned. And of course, you could also lose on. And if your like honor score was too low, then remember, we're talking, feudal Japan, there would be like a demand for you to commit seppuku. So kind of interesting there as well. There were some other aspects to the game mechanically. In fact, I want to say, I think the first time I saw the term downtime, like we utilize the term nowadays, downtime in your role-playing game, I think it was in Bushido. Kind of interesting, eh? So, there were like I said, there were all these different bonuses and things like that. So, like in combat, if you were a warrior, you would get bonuses to your BCS and stuff like that. There were a lot of modifiers. And that's where you get a lot of the crunch. Something else I thought was kind of cool with Bushido were all the different weapons. I don't remember there being artwork like you would see like in AD&D of all the different weapons and that. It may have been in there. I just don't remember seeing that. But yeah, you had all that kind of stuff. And like your weapons did anywhere from a point of damage to 2d10. So, I mean, 2d10 was a big deal. Michael Hislop points out the ninja did not earn honor, right? Because weren't the ninja like not considered people? Isn't that kind of how it worked? That's why they didn't earn honor. They didn't lose honor because they didn't really have any status in the culture. I think that's how it worked. I might be wrong. Agile Monk with a $10 super chat. So it's for Jeff being on top of his FGU game, knowing so much about Bushido and a great topic. Yeah, I know a good amount about a lot of games out there. I know stuff about games I never played. I never even owned. I know stuff about. But I thought Bushido was very cool. There were also rules for campaigns, but I think that was in the second book. So the first book was character creation, your core rules for the most part. There were like saving throws, but if I remember correctly, I think the saving throws were kind of exactly like the BCS. So if you needed to make a strength save or a deafness save, you just put together a BCS and had to roll equal to or less than, you know. But the second book was Land of Nippon, and that's where we had the bestiary, and it was actually a pretty short bestiary, but it had a lot of stuff packed into it. The stat blocks, I remember, kind of looked like Call of Cthulhu stat blocks. Old Call of Cthulhu stat blocks. So if you had like first edition Call of Cthulhu, you'd have kind of the stat block, and then you'd maybe have like 2-3 paragraphs, which I'm fine with, right? I don't necessarily need 4 pages devoted to a goblin. I mean, give me some good information. How do I use this thing outside of combat 2? And I'm all good to go. I don't necessarily need, like 4 pages. So I remember that, and I think the bestiary took up all of about 20 pages out of probably around 60. Maybe about 15. But I thought the supernatural beings section was pretty cool. So I've always liked about like Japanese myth, or the supernatural entities. What are they called? Like the mushi, things like that. The kami. Yeah, I always dug that stuff. To me personally, I think it was the Land of Nippon book, which was the selling point for Bushido, because it discussed, the people, the culture, the importance of family and honor, and how it wasn't just going out hunting monsters as far as an adventure went. Could be a lot of different things going on. And it also discussed like the usage of skills such as calligraphy and dancing and the tea ceremony and stuff like that. And then I think there were some like campaign rules for the player characters once they were like going up in social status and level, them to like create their own, like if they were like priest characters, create their own temple, things like that. I don't recall it being a lot of page count. As far as adventures, I never had a Bushido adventure. And it was probably because the stores that I would go and buy games from never carried any. So I think that's probably why I'm not all too familiar at all, really, outside of maybe some titles of some of the adventures that were made available at the time. There you go. Agile Monk points out they had Valley of the Mist adventure pack. I think that was the first one that came out. Had quite a few monsters and the scary myths and creatures in it. Another thing, wasn't there like an introductory adventure in the second book, but it was all of like a page, and then there was like the map for like a compound or something like that. So I think adventures were presented very concisely. That they wasn't like, oh, okay, it's a 32-page module. I think it was, okay, so there's a few adventures in this soft cover that's maybe like 24 pages or something like that. Agile Monk will be able to point us in the right direction on that. So Agile Monk says that Ninja didn't earn honor because they got classified a Ronin by the Shogun. So Hisio was asking, were the Bushido adventures any good? Michael Islap said, as a ninja, you had no name because of your status in society. Right, because I didn't think you, as a ninja, I didn't think there was a status. So anyway, Stray Kismet is also discussing ninja. They were property owned by the Shogun. They were spies, and jerk with a knife can be an assassin, but a ninja were eyes, ears, I'm gonna think it's rumor makers and mythic pains in the ass. And I think clan leaders there were different clans of ninja tied to various different leaders, not just the Shogun. All right. So let's talk about how did I stumble across Bushido? So if you've watched a good number of episodes, you have probably heard me make reference to this gaming weekend that would pop up in Oak Park, Illinois, because of course we were all Chicagoans, and Oak Park is like a suburb right next to Chicago. In fact, a lot of people think it's still Chicago, although it is the suburb of Oak Park. And there was this community center, and for the life of me, I can't remember how we found out about this. It might have been our friend Tim heard about it, or it might have been our friend Scott who heard about this like game weekend in Oak Park. And we were like, oh, wow. I mean, it's right there. Elliot didn't live that far from Oak Park. I was a little further away, but I still would have gone. So anyway, we were going to go, and if I remember correctly, there were 4 or 5 of us, and we were all going to just stay at Elliot's because, once again, if you follow the show, you know, when Elliot was a teenager, he lived in a finished basement. So he had an apartment, essentially, to himself. So now, granted, he didn't have like a kitchen or kitchenette or anything like that. But he had a bathroom and a shower and a bedroom, and had a living area where the TV was, and a couch and a easy chair and stuff like that, right? So anyway, so we had all decided we were going to spend the Friday and Saturday night at Elliot's, so that we could all go back and forth to this game weekend. And I think it turned out that it was Tim, Scott, our good friend Daryl, Elliot, and myself. And we went on Friday because it started on Friday at, I think it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. It was kind of cool. And it was like, okay, so they had, people were like in open gaming and that, and then they had little events that you could sign up for and stuff. So we were like, oh man, this is cool. This is great. In fact, I remember we played Nuclear War from Flying Buffalo Games. I think Scott, it was Scott's copy that he brought with. So anyway, I don't recall if it was the first game weekend we went to or the second game weekend we went to, but Elliot and I ended up playing in a game of Bushido, and we were the only players. So it was the game master who was probably in his 20s and us. And of course, we knew nothing about Bushido. So, kind of ran through it a little bit, kind of give us an idea. And I remember my character was a Bushi, a warrior. And I forget the name of the pole arm that they have. It's almost like a glaive. That was my weapon. If you watched the latest version of Shogun, it seems like all of the guards carry these things around. Big long blade on them and stuff. So anyway, that was my weapon. And Elliot was, I think he was like a priest character. He was either a priest character or he was a magic user. One of the two. And our mission was to retrieve something that had been stolen for our Lord. Hissia says maybe Neganata. I think, yeah, you know what? That probably was it. It probably was. Agile Monk said they're going to go pull their box. They think they have one of the books in the Bushido box has the honor-bound initiation adventure in it. Troy Cornelson has popped on. I'm here. Start over. Start rewinding, Troy. So anyway, so we end up, this is like a 4-hour session, something like that. Stray Kismet says stolen or stolen. I want to say it was stolen. And we were like tracking the thief. We were trying to track down the thief. And then, of course, we ended up getting waylaid by bandits that we, you know, made short work out of. And then at some point we encountered a ghost, a supernatural creature of some sort. It wasn't just a traditional ghost. And we fought that. And if I remember correctly, I was on death's door by the end of that. And then we ended up tracking down the thief, and we were able to scare them into handing over the object that had been stolen, which was probably because we were at, you know, the end of the 4-hour session or whatever, right? You know, rather than be like, oh, yeah, we're out of time, everybody. Don't know what happens in the end. But it was pretty cool because the game master knew the era and they understood Japanese culture during the feudal era, I would say. So a lot of times, you know, it'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And he would say, okay, well, just so you know, that would probably be frowned upon. And he would tell us, like, why? And I was like, oh, he said, so what you would probably do, because he would tell us, you can do whatever you want, but since, you know, you're new to the game and you don't know about these different things, and I thought, wow, that's, you know, that rather than feeling like, wow, this dude's telling us what we can and can't do in a role-playing game, great. No, it wasn't like that at all. It was sort of like, and it was kind of like, it gave us the feeling as we were playing that we were kind of catching on. Oh, okay, so this is how this character would be, right? So had a good time, enjoyed the hell out of it. And I was like, I got to go find this. And it took a while. I did not find Bushido right away. It was probably about 6 months later that I stumbled across it and I bought it. And I will be the first to admit I never ran it. There was another game that I picked up, enjoyed reading. It wasn't a game that I was like, oh, I can't figure this out. But I did know that it was a bit more complex than Call of Cthulhu, with all the different modifiers and things like that. But I really liked it. The question I've got about Bushido is the paperback, the soft cover that's available from Fantasy Games Unlimited, as well as the PDF that's out on Drive-Thru RPG, I do not think is actually the first edition of Bushido that came in a box set. Now I know it's a book and a PDF, so obviously it's not going to be a box set anyway. but I think it's like a second edition, which may have been cleaned up a little bit as far as the presentation and how intuitive the rule process was. Because wasn't the rule book presented like in case point, almost like Avalon Hill war games and war games of that period were presented? Wasn't that an FGU thing where their rule books were presented in the, oh, okay, so this is 10.0 and this is 10.1, 10.2, 10.3. Okay, so this is 11 and so forth. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was. So I'm kind of curious if the edition that's available as a book from FGU and available as a PDF, Drive-Thru RPG, is expanded. And the reason why is because, for one, I had already mentioned this before, on the FGU website, it says it includes the 3 books from the box set. And then the PDF over on Drive-Thru RPG says, oh, here's the 2 books, Heroes of Nippon and Land of Nippon. So I'm kind of like, okay, well, wouldn't the folks over at FGU know if it's 2 or 3 books? I don't know. But I'll also be very honest. I would think if the folks over at FGU ever wanted to revise Bushido and try to make it a little more modern with some more modern artwork, because something else I remember, I don't think some of the interior artwork was all that great. The exterior art on the books and the box were great. I seem to recall that some of the line art inside was less than stellar, I guess I'll say. But once again, I've pointed this out before. And in fact, somebody got pissed at me with my review of Call of Cthulhu Innsmouth because I mentioned the artwork. But you know what? I don't really care that much about art. I care about the content of the book. Now, if the artwork is trash, I'm going to tell you, hey, it's trash. But if some of it's really good and some of it's kind of like, I don't really care that much. Like I said, I seem to remember some of the line art was kind of like, All right. Angel Bugs telling Troy, well, the stream started with Jeff talking about being born. Then he went to his first day in kindergarten. I bawled my eyes out. I didn't want to leave the car my first day of kindergarten. And then after that, I loved school. Straight Kismet says, one of their favorite things about Call of Cthulhu was learning so much about the 1920s. I am right with you on that. And then when Cthulhu by Gaslight came out, I started learning all about the Dickens era, the Victorian era. In fact, what was the book that I had? I think you can still get it. It was something like, what did Charles Dickens eat? And Jane Austen wear? Or something along those lines, right? And it was very, very detailed. It wasn't a huge book. It was maybe about yay big. Thick, I should say. Shazama says the player's book is 80 pages. The GM's book is 48. So the GM's book is shorter than I thought. Box had a GM screen. Yes, I went through what was in the original box. So you got the GM screen, you got a fold-out map of Nippon, and you also got a reference sheet and character sheets. But no, there was no adventure. That's why I had mentioned I was kind of thrown by FGU's website saying, oh, the 3 books in the box set. Was there, because I know there was a second edition of Bushido that came out. I just wasn't aware that it was a box set, and maybe that included an adventure. I have no idea. The Tabletop Scholar is joining us in chat. All right. So that is another forgotten RPG favorite. As we were talking about, Bushido from Fantasy Games Unlimited. Once again, you can pick up Bushido as a softcover book. It is $20 over at the fantasygamesunlimited.net website. You can also get the PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG. Normally $10 right now. It is part of the Xmas in July sale. So it is $7. And of course, if you are going to pop over and pick it up, stop at thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, I will get a small portion of that sale. So tomorrow night, I think we are probably just going to kind of hang out. I'm going to share the news. And then maybe it's kind of like a Gen Con, here we come sort of episode. Maybe I'll share some stories about Gen Con. My past experiences at Gen Con, both in Indianapolis as well as in Milwaukee. And then next week, there will be no shows. I was kicking around, do I want to do a show on Tuesday night? And I thought, I got to leave early in the morning on Wednesday to go pick Elliot up. And then thankfully, Elliot does not have to work. So we don't need to be in a hotel with Wi-Fi at 8 o'clock Eastern. There's 7 or 8 o'clock Eastern. So he's working. So we don't have to bust our asses to get there, but still we are going to show up early because I am bringing stuff for the auction. And I want to hopefully park in the parking lot of the hotel where the auction is. So once we get our passes, I've talked about this before, we have to wait till 4 o'clock to get our press passes. And then we got to head back over to this hotel, bring the stuff up to the auction because you have to have a badge before you can put stuff into the auction. So anyway, long story short, we're still going to go early. Because if we show up late, there's no way we're ever going to get into that parking lot. But so no shows next week. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't going to be any videos. I am going to look to get some reviews out there. And then, of course, I've got interviews set up. I will talk about those tomorrow as well, so you know what's coming, or at least what we have scheduled. Every once in a while, we have stuff lined up that just doesn't come about as far as interviews. But we got our usual favorites we're going to be talking to. And then maybe somebody we haven't heard from in a while. And maybe a new publisher or two. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, let's see. Let's finish up with Chad here. Tabletop Scholar says they're going to pick up the Great Pendragon campaign. You're going to click the link. Yeah, I know. It's an awesome campaign. Don't get me wrong. Okay, me going has nothing to do with previous editions of the Great Pendragon campaign. Never reviewed it. I have read it before I actually was reviewing stuff. I do wish Chaosium Inc. had been presenting it as one volume or as a slipcase set, as opposed to they're breaking it out into multiple books. So the first book is The Boy King, which is supposed to be sometime this year. I wouldn't be shocked if I see it at Gen Con. There are a couple of Rivers of London releases that are going to be at Gen Con. So there you Tabletop Scholar says, I have a feeling given next month's release, there's a tiny chance it drops from a physical print on demand. Can't take the risk. Agile Monk says, you'll love it. It's amazing. I'm also a Pendragon fan since the first version. Yeah, Pendragon is a unique role-playing game, and some people dig it, some people do not. I like it. I think it's a fantastic role-playing game. But some people don't like that, you've got the almost like the positive aspects, negative aspects. But I think some of those people probably are not playing it correctly. Tabletop Scholar says, I want it for Pendragon Classic. Yeah, because didn't they just release a new print edition? Didn't they kickstart it for Pendragon Classic? So they also want to pick up the Modern Grey Knight book to expand on the classic version. Yes, I reviewed that. So yes, Agile Monk points out exactly. You either love it or it just isn't your thing. All right, everybody, that is it for this time out. If you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, you get a tip of the cap. Because, you're not only keeping me company, you're keeping each other company while I'm sharing the news or pontificating about a topic. Of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you for taking time out to watch any of the videos here on the channel. I really do appreciate it. Most seriously. Of course, if you liked the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. And if you ring the bell, be sure to select all notifications, because it'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central right here on YouTube. Also let you know when I share other videos, such as my recent reviews of the Invincible role-playing game starter set. Or I should say, Invincible superhero role-playing starter set. Let's be official. As well as today's release in stores, Call of Cthulhu Innsmouth from Chaosium Inc. Invincible is from Free League Publishing and Skybound Entertainment. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to see here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Everybody enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you for watching. And as always, I certainly hope each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.